2 summers ago, I graduated from college and proceeded to side quest well past the point of no return. I lived off-grid in the Mojave Desert for 1 month, proceeded to head out to Los Angeles to visit a buddy, and then took buses up the West Coast, camping along the way, traveling with a homeless person all the way to Seattle, Washington. I took the train back from Seattle to Chicago and bus from Chicago down to Cincinnati. From that moment, I was hooked, meeting new people, seeing new places, and living in the question of where to next. After that moment, I decided to head back to Columbus, Ohio to do some caddying and make some money. Along the way up to Columbus, I stopped at my old stomping grounds of Gourmet Pizza, the pizza shop I worked at second semester senior year. And upon arriving in, I'm getting a pizza and getting a drink. My old manager named Craig asked me, "Sam, are you coming into work tomorrow?" I wasn't on the schedule, but I was in such a mood to go with the flow that I said, "Yeah, sure, Craig, I'll come in." After catching up with some buddies that Friday night, I decided to go into the pizza shop the next day around 4. Lo and behold, I noticed a new face behind the counter. Their name was Ruby. Ruby and I immediately hit it off, both being in our young 20s, wondering what our lives were meant to be and asking ourselves how we wanted to live them. We talked about the desire to travel and explore the world. We kept in touch and hung out once before I headed out east. And on my journey out east, I found myself at a New Jersey rest stop with 2 friends I'd met at a farm in Maryland the day prior. And I got a phone call from Ruby. And Ruby called me super elated saying, "Sam, I just sat in ceremony with the chief from Mexico. He told me you're going to come down and sing to my village." And Ruby asks, "Hey, can my friend Sam come? He loves to travel too." And in that moment, I didn't know what I was doing 2 weeks down the road. My plan at the moment was to head up to Maine and look for a job on a sailboat. So I said, "Yeah, Ruby, I'll come down to Mexico with you. That sounds awesome." So I proceeded to head to Boston, and after Boston, I took the train back to Cleveland and ended up stopping at this here spot in Albany, New York, where I looked out just into the distance, into the skyline, wondering what I was going to get myself into. Lo and behold, I go back to Columbus, where I stayed in the extra room in Ruby's apartment and really got to know them on a deep personal level. It was beautiful. Ruby Red is a community builder, an artist, a healer, a small business owner, and so much more. Now, please enjoy this conversation with Ohio's own Ruby Red. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, Ruby Red from Zanesville, Ohio.
Yeah.
How old were you when the animals escaped?
I wasn't living there actually. I think that's the most prominent thing that people remember about Zanesville, and I wasn't there for it. So I graduated from Zanesville. I'm from a small farm town in northern Ohio, and I caught like the last 2 years, which was like 2017, 2018, and it was still pretty fresh in everyone's minds, the animals, but I wasn't there.
Did you have any friends that were there when it did go down?
All of them, yeah. Yeah, the school was like under lockdown apparently, and they had like everyone in the school, and there were like whatever bears, tigers on the streets or something. But I did live on Route 666 in Zanesville, so
Wow.
yeah. Wild place.
So you graduated from Zanesville, and then when did you make your way over to Columbus?
Probably about a year and some change after I graduated. I moved out here to live with a partner, actually. And it was kind of like a through hell or high water. I packed all of the items that I had that could fit into a 2000 Buick Century that I paid $300 for, and I trucked it over here. So,
And how was that experience moving in with a partner? First time kind of out of your
hometown?
Man, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. Can I cuss on here? Cool. I didn't know what I was doing. I look back on it and I'm feeling like grateful that I did it. I probably would have waited. But I've had such an opportunity to explore so many life paths here that I couldn't be angry at it. Why regret?
Yeah.
Uh,
Would you mind running us through the life paths you've gone through so far and
oh yeah.
giving us a brief overview as far as what your beautiful life has looked like?
Yeah, so I was raised very religious. Both my parents were very staunch, like Christians, and my dad is actually still the usher of the church that I went to growing up. And my mom is like kind of like left and come back and left and come back and left and come back, but um, she moved us to Zanesville after my parents separated, and there was still a lot of the like that good Christian girl upbringing that was like super heavy. And so when I moved to Columbus, I was kind of operating under that. You should get married and you should get the house and you should have the kids and all that sort of stuff. And I realized during the pandemic when we were in lockdown, that's not for me. That's not my medicine. And so I started recognizing that I'm not monogamous and that I'm very spiritual, not in the Christian sense anymore, but coming back to like a more naturalist sort of like belief that nature is God, if there's a good word for it. And I left that relationship. I started fresh, moved downtown, moved into this loft for a while. And after that, I was just sort of like shuffling around the city, almost trying to find myself. I got the corporate job, I made good money. I stepped away from the corporate job because I was like, this is not for me. I am not meant to be in a 9 to 5. And started working at Gourmet, a pizza shop downtown here. And I eventually broke out and realized that I was meant to find my own way, like start my own journey, have my own business, do my own community work. Like I it and who knows what stems from authority figure issues, but but I've realized that I've been meant to make my own way in this world. That feels really fresh and exciting. So
Congratulations.
yeah.
How long did that desire to make your own way first stem inside of you, and how did it grow throughout your time
Yeah.
working in corporate America and going to the pizza shop and any other side endeavors you did? Could you run us through that whole
Yeah.
transformation?
I think it starts from when I was really young, actually, because when you're a farm kid, you are kind of taught to do everything yourself, Like I was pretty much running this chicken farm from when I was like 8 years old to like 14 or something like that. And so you realize that your impact on your life can be much greater than if you live under the impact of somebody else's experience. And growing up, I think I always had that like Appalachian grit that's kind of like put into you. Like my mama down in Southern Ohio, she's always been very adamant about being independent. And like as I moved here, I recognized how often and how easy it is to just do what somebody tells you, to just follow what somebody says is right without the consideration of, is this actually what I want? And so as I started to listen to my body and listen to what I wanted, I realized that I have a high tolerance for pain and a low tolerance for misery. And with corporate America, you need the opposite. You need like high tolerance for misery to like do that for, the next 20 to 40 years and get the retirement plan and do all those things. And, 2 almost 3 years into it, and I was like, oh. And that could be wonderful for other people, not for me. And so I got together with like a small group of friends and we were releasing an album of mine. And it was like the first album that I had, and we kind of had this idea of like, how can we make it bigger? I don't know, like how can we do this? And I was like, what if we just made it like a market? What if we made it a whole thing? And what if it became something and what like was monthly, and we just invited like traveling musicians and stuff like that? And I think people always look at me and they have this look of like they're crazy. They're just a little wild. But it happened. Like that happened. We did all of that.
So right after your album release is when your market came
hmm
about,
Yeah.
and people from the album release helped you build that.
Yeah. So it was me and my friend Amber, and at the time we were working pretty closely with the venue downtown, and we had the beautiful opportunity to like move that around the city. Like it was really cool. It didn't stay in one place. It moved. And I think the furthest reach that we had, like the band that came from the farthest was actually Arizona. Like we had a band from Arizona come and play, which was really cool, and it was completely serendipitous. So it was awesome. That whole experience really set in stone that I could do whatever the fuck I want. You could just do it. And you're oftentimes your own worst enemy with that, your own worst critic. So if you just do the thing, then it eventually happens. But yeah.
Mm. And could you run us through what the market looked like and all the different artists and musicians that may have came and collaborated together?
Yeah. So when we started this, I was pretty active in the underground scene of Columbus, where it would be like small open mics, like little house shows. Our friends would collaborate and make music and all that sort of stuff. Um, and eventually, I looked around and I was like, these guys deserve a stage. These guys deserve a platform. They're so talented. I'm so proud of all of them. They're making this beautiful music, and I want more people to hear it. And so eventually, like after the album came out, everyone was really excited about it. A lot of people helped collaborate and had heard all the music before. And so I pulled together, because I'd been running events for a few years at the time, all the vendors I knew, all the local businesses, like, here, just come be here, just come apply, just come do this thing. And so we had two stages, and we had like 30 vendors, and we had like Reiki healers, and we had, there was like a guy playing kora, the African harp, like in between the sets, and there was a whole art gallery, and there was like it was cool, and it took up the space of this whole like church building. It was awesome. And it ran like an hour and a half over because we had 20 musicians playing. And so by the end, when I was meant to play, we were like, oh man, there's going to be three people here. It's almost midnight. The city's going to be mad. Like, and everyone stayed. There was like a crowd of like probably like 100 people that had stayed for this, and it was beautiful. Like that was the stepping stone. And so after that, we would have different themes, and it was always like an openly queer, openly like poly friendly, openly like a few times we had like a sober space that we created. So it was meant for everyone to come, and it was like a melting pot, like the old and the young just mixed together in this space, and that was really beautiful.
Mm. Mm.
Mm.
As far as the queer community goes, were you exposed to any of that when you were in Appalachia, or was that a brand new world once you arrived in Columbus?
I always knew that I was a weird kid, and I like to joke because my neurodivergent self had a library when I was growing up, and it had a check-in, check-out system. And the first time my parents caught me with a Playboy was because I had checked it into the library. Like, and so all you had to do was look at the list, because it would be like this thing, this edition. Like, and so I knew that there was that attraction there, and I thought that it was something wrong with me. And I was the like only open gay person like in the town that I grew up. Like it's got like one stoplight, and I think they might have two now, but it's like my graduating class would have been like maybe 50 or less. Like it was small, and it kind of felt like a wrong thing, a thing that you needed to suppress. And like after my parents had put me in like a sort of therapy, Bible study to get rid of that sort of feeling and emotion, um, I kind of just realized like, oh, people know about this. And it kind of did the opposite effect. I was like, oh, okay, well now I'm just gonna do it. And after I moved to, Zanesville and, bigger city, I started realizing that not only was it a thing, it was like a normal thing and it was fine. And there are people who don't care. Like there are people who care very deeply. Like my dad doesn't know I'm trans, but it's normal to some folks, it's just, it exists. So, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It does. Thank you. And diverting off of that and being trans, first off, congrats.
Thank you.
Congrats, Ruby. Along that journey, could you run us through your overall experience and how it may have been being in a society where that isn't necessarily welcomed, and
Yeah.
all of the mental overrides you clearly overcame to get to where you are now?
Yeah. It kind of, like if you look at what it's like to grow up on a farm, you're not going to go feed the chickens in a dress and a skirt. And that was never my preference. It was never something that I wanted to do. It was, I would have overalls or pants. I looked like a little boy half the time. And I never wanted to wear like the frilly skirts, dresses, all that sort of stuff. And I didn't realize that there was a binary, like masculine and feminine, until I started going to school. And then I felt very like odd duck because I didn't feel like I looked how I wanted in like these clothes or whatnot. And I do you guys need to pass through? Okay. Go for it. But I'll just start it over. Yeah. So I became aware that there was like a gender binary and that there was a wrong way and a right way to dress with the body and the sex that I was assigned at birth. And going through school, I felt very complex. I was always in the principal's office for how I was dressing. I was always breaking dress code because when I got to like middle school, high school, they had enforced like boys wear polos and khakis, girls wear skirt and whatever. And I never wanted to wear the skirt, I wasn't comfortable in it. And then eventually you kind of just have to. And I knew that there was like a gay thing going on. I didn't know there was a gender thing going on for a really long time because this was so unwelcome and I didn't feel safe enough to explore this. And I didn't start thinking about what gender identity was until after I had left the partner that I came out here with, um, because I realized that I wasn't ever going to be a housewife. And not just in the sense of like, I'll never get married. Like, it wasn't that. It was the fact that I don't want to be a woman. I don't want to fall under that category. And with that, I started looking into like, well, what other options are there? And that's when I came across the term like non-binary and what that meant. And the more people I talked to, because I've always asked people questions, like rather than Googling and stuff like that, I want to meet somebody with this like identity label. And the more people that I talked to who are non-binary and the more people who asked me my pronouns, the more I questioned it. I was like, wait, you're right. If you're looking at me and you're like, you look like a they, them, interesting. Like, that's interesting. And so I started exploring pronouns and exploring like the fluidity of what gender could be. And ultimately, in the last year, it became very apparent that I was trans. Like, it was more than just like non-binary. And I was at a Halloween party. I had like gotten home from trauma and I had gone as like satanic mechanic, right? And I'd put on a mustache and I had the facial hair. And I realized when I was looking in the mirror, taking off the makeup, that I was crying. And I wasn't like totally fully realizing that I was in tears, but I was really upset because I was taking off the facial hair. I wanted it to stay there. And I journaled and I asked friends and I consulted family and I consulted partners. And ultimately, I realized that I wanted more than just top surgery. For the longest time, I was like, okay, I just want top surgery. And it was more than that. Like, I wanted to transition. And so in November of last year, I started testosterone. And so now I'm about 4 months in on it. Um, and I really couldn't be happier with that. I've felt a lot of backlash from my family. There have been family members who have disowned me over it. And I've, felt it in the workplace, like the workforce. If you accept any sort of services from the state or anything that help you seek employment, they can write down in your file that you're trans. They can tell you up front that you may have to use the bathroom that's for your assigned sex at birth, regardless of where you're at in your transition. Because I wanted like male interview clothes, like masculine interview clothes, that was something that they'd have to write down in the file because that's where state funds are being allocated. I've watched a partner change their name and gender marker, ask if they were going to be safe, and attorneys and things tell them, who knows? Like there's a lot of legislation in our government right now that is very scary for trans people. And there is a lot of fear in a lot of the trans community that commingles with the joy, it exists with the joy. Like, I'm not here to say that it's all bad for trans people because I live in a city that's very welcoming and I have a community and a support system that's very queer. Not everyone has that luxury. And if I were to come out as trans in Zanesville or in Willard, it'd be very, very different. Very different.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough to hear.
Yeah. It's tough to feel sometimes. It's 2025 now. And when I came out, I think I have this like naive feeling that, oh, it's me. I'm so lovable. It'll all be okay. But some people don't love you and some people don't respect you and some people can't look past the metal to see the face, Like there are people who are very stuck in a generational cycle. They're stuck in that trauma that, like if your parents told you that this isn't okay and this isn't normal and this isn't rational, you have one of two paths. You can choose to accept that and live that and walk in that perceived truth, or you can walk away and you can do something entirely different than what your parents, or it doesn't even have to be entirely different, it's just finding your own way. And a lot of people at that fork in the road, especially with trans people, it's hard for them to choose a different path because it's so unfamiliar and strange. And some people view it as like demonic and stuff like that. And there's everybody has their own feeling of truth. Truth isn't necessarily fact. So
Yeah. And throughout your journey, how have the beliefs in Lakota spirituality, could you touch on what switch spirits are,
mm-hmm.
how that's helped you, and maybe if there's any parallel between switch spirits and Lakota spirituality and any other belief system that isn't necessarily mainstream these days, and how it's helped the trans or queer community become more deeply rooted in themselves. And
yeah. So and I can only speak on the knowledge and the experiences that I've had. I've sat in a few different types of ceremonies in the Lakota way, and how Two Spirit has been explained to me is that someone who's Two Spirit there are two spirits occupying one body. And when somebody refers to them as like switch spirit or two spirit, it goes back to that gender fluidity. A very it's a broad but sacred label for people who don't fall into cis man or cis woman. And we're taught that this is why you sit in the hottest part of the lodge. It's going to be a hard path. You know that it's not going to be easy. You know that it's going to feel really hot. Like when you walk through life sometimes, because you know it's not always accepted. Even indigenous communities, it's not always accepted. And I was just reading about how ancient that identity is. And we have mainstream Eurocentric culture now, which has been strongly influenced by colonialization and things like that, and Christianity, and how different, the Lakota way is from our society. I mean, at the very basic level, we talk about freedom and love and this like individualist sort of culture. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, do it for you, provide for your family, and there's almost like a separation. But with the Lakota, it's almost like instead of this pyramid where human beings are at the top and every other like being is at the bottom, you sit in a circle with all of them and you are like equal. You're on equal playing fields. And you've heard it in ceremony, like we say Mitako Yayo Yasin, which means like you are all related. We are all related. And that belief alone in the trans experience has led me to see compassion for these people who don't understand, choose not to understand, commit acts of violence. And that's compassion for those people is so difficult. It's so hard because we're taught that we are unsafe if somebody threatens us, and we are, this person is good or bad, and there's only two choices. But in ceremony, it's not like that. You come with your prayer, and you come with all of your baggage and your anger and your emotions that you want to let go, process, release, and you move past whatever you're feeling with community. And that has also been a massive part of my spiritual belief, is realizing how community can change you. Like I've had the beautiful experience and the beautiful opportunity of witnessing like a queer elder come out, impact the whole community, and watch people's opinions about trans change, and like what that means. And I see these like older men who maybe have never met like someone who's trans and their age, and that is beautiful because I think a lot of culture today believes that this is only the young kids and it's only a phase and it's gonna pass and it's gonna subside, and there's a gender craze, gender mania happening. But the reality is, and what we've been taught in ceremony, is that this is ancient and it's sacred. And when you hold two spirits, that's where that compassion comes from. Especially as being trans, my partner and I joke all the time, like, oh, and there's another compassionate thought for cis men. Like, and that's something that, we didn't really want. It's easy, like when you grow up as like feminist, like woman, you're like, I don't love men. And when you decide to become one, you're like, fuck. Like, man, I guess I am smellier. Like, no matter how many times I shower. But yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
In your exploration of Lakota spirituality, you have been able to go to some ceremonies in
Mm-hmm.
different states. Would you mind touching on
Hmm.
your experience and any stories you may want to share.
Um, so I've been to the Sundance in South Dakota in the Rosebud Reservation, and I've been down to Mexico in Coahuila. Um, in Saltillo, there was a Vision Quest that I had the opportunity to attend, and we have regular lodges that happen here in Ohio. And yeah, I found the lodge first, and everything sort of trickled from there. Where I stumbled in, I was not sober. I was, I was actively like smoking and drinking and all that sort of stuff. Um, and to have like a sober ceremony gave me like an excuse to put it down for a little bit. And so, I set it down day before I come in, and I could not believe the medicine that came out of it. And I could not believe that like I knew the songs already, and I was like, where did that come from? I've never heard this. Um, and I started going regularly, and the more I went, the harder it was to, put any sort of booze to my lips, and the harder it was to stay high all the time, and the harder it was to have so many vices and do all of these things. And there's this concept that was taught to me about the red road and about sobriety and about what that looks like. And so ultimately, I decided to follow that. I decided to begin my journey of sobriety, and I've just hit 1 year on that. I feel really, really positively.
Congrats.
Woo, 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 woo. But gosh, what was that? October of 23. Oh man, that was crazy. Yeah, we went down to Mexico and sat with the locals there and supported for the Vision Quest. And it was wild. I've never been in another country. I'm like fully trusting that I'll have enough knowledge of Spanish to make it through. And I did. We made it. But yeah, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I had never felt so held by these mountains, this massive canyon. Oh, it was gorgeous. And like right when we had gone down there, there was this hurricane hitting Mexico. And so what would usually be like sunny, beautiful, warm desert was like 40 degrees, like rainy fog, mist. Like our campground got flooded. We stayed in like the national park sort of lodge thing that they had. Um, but it was wild. I actually met my first like two-spirit child there though. That was really, I think that also kind of prompted like, whoa, if I could have been allowed to experience this, because it was like a 9-year-old kid, and they would introduce themselves and they're like, hello, my name is this. I'm not a boy. I'm not a girl. Like, I was like, wow, yeah, yeah, you are. Like, oh. And so I got really close with them, and I got really close with their mom. Um, it was beautiful, beautiful. I love that experience so dearly. And it was this exercise of like trust and compassion and surrender to a circumstance where you know nothing. You recognize that you know nothing. I'm it's me and one other person that really spoke. Well, no, there was two other people that spoke English aside from me on that whole trip that we could talk to. But didn't you ask me how to order like tacos while we were down there?
Probably, yeah.
It was great. But yeah, that was gorgeous. And so when I came back from that, I knew that I needed to do this thing. I'm watching people come off of this mountain, like starving and wet and hungry, and I was like, I need to do that. Like, I don't know why. I don't know why I need
Yeah.
to, but yeah, I'm meant to go on my first Vision Quest in like late fall of this year, whenever the date is, in October maybe. But yeah, and then Sundance was really beautiful. Um, it was a beautiful test of like anger and processing and how to let go of your attachment to the outcome. Because when like it's an 18 almost 20-hour drive out there. It's a long
To
one
where?
to South Dakota to Rosebud. And you know, we take my friend's truck, we drive all the way out there. We get there and like we spent a couple days on a cattle ranch before we went into the ceremony just to sort of get acclimated, look at the Badlands and all that sort of stuff. And I began to see that there were two general beliefs about Native Americans, indigenous people, when I got out there. And it was like, one, they're on this pedestal, they're like wonderful, sacred, all those things. And two, they're drug addicts that, you know, fuel our local economy by, you know, selling their jewelry for low prices that we can charge triple of. And that was really upsetting. I think my liminal I think my personal hell would be wall drug out in South Dakota. Ooh.
Have you
Oh
seen Nomadland?
no.
It's this story about like a 60-year-old woman whose town is decimated by business, and she gets in a van and drives
Yeah.
just around, and she ends up living in South Dakota, working at Wall Drug, wearing one of those hats.
Oh my
And
God.
it was so unique to see that lifestyle of going in there, working a job, and then coming back out to your van to like cook food.
It's insane. It's like, and that's people's Walmart. Like Wall Drug is people's Walmart because like the closest grocery store is like 2 hours away. And so I needed like stationery and to send a letter. We had to go to Wall Drug. And it's like they're like, we sell real native artifacts. Like here's buffalo skull sourced from God knows where. Like it was heinous. It oh blah. I so I go there and I'm like, okay, this is how it is, you know, this is what it's like. I'm gonna release the anger that I have here and I'm gonna go into the ceremony and be present for it. And then what I expected to get out of the ceremony was like working in the kitchen and helping the whole time and doing the thing. And, you know, there's a sense of like ego, wanting to support and wanting to have an impact on the ceremony, and wanting to like be able to see your work and the outcome of it. And the second day I was there, I started my moon. And so I had to be in moon camp for 6 days.
And what's your moon?
So moon is like it's like your period. It's your period. And so the idea is that you kind of need to be like separate from it for a whole host of reasons that I won't go into. But essentially, like I'm separate from the whole thing, and I can hear the music, and I can see some things happen, and I can see all these people like talking about how great it was. And man, I was pissed. I was
So
so
where
upset.
were you in the relation to the scene going on?
So originally, Auntie Joanne was like, "Okay, you need to drive 2.5 hours out to oh, wherever the airport is. It's like the something." And so it's like, "Okay, go stay by the airport," which again, 2.5 hours. That's a long way away, and I know no one there. We didn't do that. We didn't do that. Tigre was wonderful. And then it was like, okay, drive an hour to Mission, stay in this casino. They're like, no, 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 no. And then it was like, okay, I'm really gonna throw you a bone. Like, walk a mile essentially. Like, go on the outskirts. There's this place that was like a junkyard. They're like, stay here, you know. And it was like 106 in the shade on the coldest day. It was 116 in the shade on the hottest day. And I'm confined to my tent and like a 10-foot radius around it and an outhouse infested with wasps. And I'm like, this is it. This is the ceremony. And I just remember like the chief, right before he leaves, he's like, this is like your own vision quest. He's like, be in it. And then he's like, you're very strong, and then walks away. And I remember feeling every emotion, and that's like anger and sadness and despair and boredom. Good God, there was boredom. My phone was dead. There's no service. Like you can't be playing solitaire in ceremony. That's not how it works. And so eventually I just stuck a stick in the dirt, learned how to tell the time by sundial, and read 2 books and bundled some sage. And so it wasn't the medicine that I wanted, but I did get to see like the last day of everything. And I just prayed. I was like, oh, please, can I see some of the ceremony? Like 5 minutes of the ceremony. And I got to see like the whole last day, which is cool. And I tell you what, I had never been so grateful to take a shower. So grateful to take a shower. It's like 3 a.m. The South Dakota stars are beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I'm taking the shower outdoors, and I'm like, oh. And what I realized is like the ceremony gave me like gratitude. You don't know how lucky you are until you can't shower for 6 days, and you're in AC, you're in a warm bed, you're not in a tent. Like you look at indoor plumbing, you're like, oh my gosh. And so like I think that's what the ceremonies really teach you, like out of everything. At least what they've taught me is like gratitude, gratitude, because there's always something worse than what you got going on. Always.
Mm.
So
And with your deep dive into Lakota spirituality, how did
mm.
that maybe proceed or intersect with your journey in Reiki healing?
Oh yeah. So I had, for probably like the last 2 years or so, I'd been really interested in hands-on healing. And I was offering hands-on healing to close friends, to people who were struggling with something. It's like, oh, you have a headache, come here, I'll squish your head for you. Um, and then like that became like, okay, well, I'm picking up on something, and like it became more intuitive. And the first time that I had went to a Reiki healer was, gosh, it was probably 2020, maybe before. And I hadn't slept in 3 days. My health was like in a crazy low place. I was having all these like seizures and things, and I lay on her table, and I mean, I was out cold, and I didn't have a seizure for like 6 months after that. It was crazy. And I was like, whoa, there's like medicine here. This is wild. And I started reading more about it. And when I wanted to be attuned to Reiki, I had to overcome that bridge of like, do I deserve this? Like, do I feel like I could offer this to anyone? And ultimately, I was like, it's not about that. It's not about me. It's not about, my abilities. It's about the desire to help people. And so I got my first attunement. And
What is an attunement?
An attunement is, so Reiki is like a frequency, right? And to align yourself with its frequency, you get an attunement. It's like a closed practice unless you are aligned with it, given the symbols, given, the ideology behind each level. And depending on the teacher, it can be like an intense class, or it can just be like a quick thing. And, I saw 2 different teachers for my attunements. And the first, it was just like a quick thing, and it was still super powerful. But then like after doing my own research and like giving myself my own homework and things like that, I got my second attunement, and it was like, whoa, this is crazy. It's Reiki is like the up level almost. It's like you keep moving up, and like you think about where you were before you open yourself up to that energy, and you're like, whoa, I am processing. I am emotional. I am aware of my body. I'm aware of other people's bodies. Like I'm aware that this is all one body. Like it's crazy. It's like it's a trip, man. As Ram Dass would say, it's pretty far out. And so like with the ceremony, I felt like some people offer Reiki, and it's just like okay, like take in deep breaths and do all this sort of stuff. But for me, it's very ceremonial. Like I set up a whole ceremonial space for my appointments and things. And I, I strongly believe in like prayer and like the medicine wheel and things like that. And, like that is my belief system. And so like that is infused with like every part of my practice, from like the herbs that I burn to like the intentions that I set, to like the conversations that I have with people before and after, how this session begins and ends. Like it's all woven into it. And I recently got my master's level, and so I've been passing attunements, and very it's beautiful to watch people evolve like right before your very eyes. It's really beautiful, and it makes me very happy. So
It's beautiful.
yeah.
Can you touch on the attunement, how that occurs, or is that more so
It's a closed practice. What I can say is that each level has symbols, and each level focuses on a different thing, like whether it's your physical body and how to tune into that, your emotional body, how to tune into that, spiritual body, how we tune into spirit, and how we, like sit with someone in like life and death and stuff like that. Like it's very powerful medicine. And if people are interested in learning more, like I'm always open to the conversation because it's beautiful. And there are also so many Reiki practitioners too. Like I am not the only one. I was not, like classically trained in this way, like methodology, but like you can find your own like niche in the Reiki community, which is beautiful. Like there's like Mahalo O, which is like an indigenous form of Reiki, which I would love to learn someday, and that's something that you have to be invited to learn, and I have been, so that's really cool. But yeah.
and who could benefit from Reiki? What are some of the
It's not even who. I mean, like if you look at the world like everything is a being, which I do, then it is who, and every being can benefit from Reiki. I've done Reiki on my food and plants and animals, and like my past selves. Like part of my practice was sending Reiki to every year of life that I've lived, and sending healing to each of the rubies that existed. And like it's every being. There's something beautiful about approaching a tree and being like, you are my favorite, and here is all of this love and energy, and it is for you, and I hope that you live long into the future. And also somebody who comes in with like chakra blockages or trauma that they're hoping to process, and they walk out with a sense of satisfaction too. Like it's just love. It's for everybody.
mm.
Hmm.
Is there anything you want to leave the people with? Any holistic message?
Mm. Healing is whole. You can't just talk it out. You can't just work it out, or you know eat it away, or go to just a therapist, or just go sit in community. It's a whole package. Do it all. Do all that life can offer you. And when you do that, you find the compassion that you need for other people, to see that you are all related. And that is medicine. Even the person you hate the most, that's your brother or your sister. And if we all looked at each other like brothers and sisters, we'd be able to grieve together and move forward in that. So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah.